The massive space station floated in the darkness like a metal city among the stars. The Valinor trading nexus was home to hundreds of ships from 47 different alien species. Today it would welcome its newest visitor, humanity. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the station grow larger on the screen. Her ship was small compared to the massive vessels docked at the station's main ports. The Defiant looked simple and plain next to the elegant alien, cruisers with their glowing hulls and artistic designs. Docking control is assigning us to berth 94, said Lieutenant Morrison from his station. He frowned at his screen. That's in the outer ring, where they put the cargo haulers. Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this. Humanity was new to the galactic community. They were the outsiders, the primitives who had only just figured out faster-than-light travel. Of course the aliens would put them in the cheap seats. Acknowledge the assignment, Sarah said calmly. Take us in nice and smooth. Let's not give them anything else to mock. The Defiant moved through the docking approach, passing enormous warships that bristled with weapons and gleaming pleasure yachts that looked more like floating palaces. Alien crews watched from viewports as the human ship went by. Sarah could imagine what they were thinking. So these are the humans. Not very impressive. The docking clamps locked onto the Defiant with a heavy thud. Sarah checked her uniform in the reflection of a monitor. Simple blue and gray with Earth's flag on the shoulder. No medals, no fancy decorations. She preferred it that way. Ready to meet our new friends? Asked Marcus Webb, the ship's chief engineer. He was a big man with calloused hands and a crooked smile. He had been with Sarah since the Isolation Wars, back when humanity was tearing itself apart. Ready as I'll ever be, Sarah replied. Remember, we're here to make friends, not enemies. Even if they treat us like dirt? Especially then. The airlock opened and Sarah stepped onto the station. The main concourse was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up 50 meters. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the space. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated or slithered or moved on mechanical platforms. The air smelled strange, like ozone and exotic spices. A delegation waited near the docking port. At the front stood a tall creature with 4 arms and scales that shimmered purple and gold. High Counselor Thexvar of the Kryn Empire. Sarah had studied his file during the journey. The Kryn were one of the most powerful species in the Coalition. They were also known for being arrogant. Commander Chen, Thexvar said. His voice came through a translator device that made it sound flat and emotionless. Welcome to the Valinor Nexus. We are pleased that humanity has finally decided to join civilized society. Sarah ignored the insult hidden in those words. Thank you, Counselor. We're honored to be here. Thexvar looked past her at the Defiant. His 4 eyes narrowed. Is that your only ship? It looks rather small, almost like a primitive cargo hauler. Several other aliens in the delegation made sounds that the translator interpreted as laughter. Sarah felt her jaw tighten but kept her expression neutral. The Defiant serves our needs, she said simply. I'm sure it does, Thexvar said. He turned to address the crowd that had gathered. More aliens were arriving every moment, drawn by curiosity about the humans. My friends, behold humanity's finest vessel, a testament to their technological development. Or should I say their lack of development? More laughter rippled through the crowd. Sarah saw Marcus's hands curl into fists, but he stayed silent. Good man. A different alien stepped forward. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of blue light. Counselor Thexvar, perhaps we should continue this in the conference hall. Nonsense, Ambassador Trill. I think it's important we understand what humanity brings to the Coalition. Thexvar walked closer to Sarah. He was nearly 2 meters tall, and he used that height to loom over her. Tell me, Commander, what exactly does Earth offer us? What technology do you have that we don't already possess in superior form? Sarah met his gaze without flinching. We offer friendship, partnership, a different perspective. Friendship? Thexvar laughed, a harsh sound even through the translator. We have enough friends. We need partners with something valuable to contribute. Advanced weapons, faster engines, new sciences. Can you offer any of these things? We have our own developments, Sarah said carefully. Then prove it. Thexvar gestured toward the Defiant. Allow us to scan your vessel. Let our scientists see what humanity has created, unless you have something to hide. Sarah felt every eye in the concourse turn toward her. This was a trap. If she refused, humanity would look weak and suspicious. If she agreed, The aliens would likely find nothing impressive and mock them even more. But there was no good choice here. Very well, Sarah said. You may scan the Defiant. Full sensors, complete analysis. We have nothing to hide from our future friends. Thexvar's scales rippled with what might have been satisfaction. Excellent. Velthar, begin the scan immediately. A smaller Kryn moved forward carrying a portable scanning device. Velthar was younger than Thexvar, with brighter scales and an expression that suggested he found this entire exercise boring. He pointed his device at the Defiant and activated it. This will only take a moment, Velthar said. Their technology is probably quite simple to analyze. The crowd waited. Sarah stood with her hands clasped behind her back, looking calm. Inside, her heart pounded. She knew what the scan would find. The question was how the aliens would react. Velthar stared at his scanner. His confident expression faded. He tapped the device several times, then shook his head. That's strange. I'm getting error messages. Try again, Thexvar said. Human technology is probably interfering with the signal. Velthar ran the scan again. Then a third time. Each time his scales paled from bright purple to almost white. The scanner trembled in his hands. Well, Thexvar demanded. What does it say? Velthar looked up. His voice was barely a whisper. Counselor, this must be wrong. The scanner is malfunctioning. It has to be. What did you find? The power readings. They don't match any known reactor type. The energy signature suggests... Velthar swallowed hard. It suggests matter-antimatter annihilation. Silence fell over the concourse. Every alien stopped moving. The floating jellyfish Ambassador Trill drifted backward in shock. That's impossible, Thexvar said flatly. Antimatter reactions are theoretically possible but practically suicidal. No species has ever successfully created a stable antimatter reactor. The containment requirements alone are beyond current science. Velthar held up his scanner. Then this device is lying, Counselor. Because according to these readings, the human ship is powered by a fully functional matter-antimatter reactor, and it's running right now, 20 meters away from us. All eyes turned to Sarah. She remained perfectly still, her expression unchanged. Marcus stood beside her with his arms crossed, looking calm. Finally, Sarah spoke. You wanted to know what humanity has to offer. Now you know. Velthar ran the scan for the fourth time. His hands were shaking now. The results came back identical. The human ship contained technology that shouldn't exist. Technology that every major species in the galaxy had declared impossible decades ago. Show me, Thexvar demanded. He grabbed the scanner from Velthar's hands and stared at the display. The color drained from his scales. Without a word, he turned and walked quickly away from the crowd. Velthar hurried after him. Sarah watched them go. Around her, the gathered aliens began talking in hushed voices. Some stared at the Defiant with new eyes, seeing not a primitive cargo hauler but something far more dangerous. Others backed away, putting distance between themselves and the human ship. That went well, Marcus muttered. Better than expected, actually, Sarah replied quietly. Within an hour, word had spread through the entire station. The humans had antimatter drives, real, functional, stable antimatter reactors that somehow didn't explode and kill everyone nearby. Scientists from a dozen different species requested immediate meetings with Sarah. Some wanted to learn. Others wanted to verify the impossible claims. A few just wanted to see the humans who had broken the laws of practical physics. Sarah stood in her temporary quarters aboard the station and reviewed the meeting requests on a data pad. 47 requests in 1 hour. She rubbed her tired eyes. You should rest, said Dr. Elizabeth Park, the Defiant science officer. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. We have a long week ahead of us. Can't rest yet, Sarah said. The Kryn have requested a private meeting in 20 minutes. Just Thexvar and his science team. That should be interesting. The meeting took place in a small conference room with walls that shifted colors slowly. Thexvar sat across from Sarah with Velthar and 2 other Kryn scientists. The High Counselor's usual arrogance was gone. He looked troubled. Explain, Thexvar said simply. Sarah leaned back in her chair. What would you like me to explain? How? How do you contain antimatter reactions? Every species that has tried ended up with craters where their research facilities used to be. The magnetic fields required are immense. The shielding alone would require materials that don't exist. The materials didn't exist, Sarah corrected. We made them. Velthar leaned forward. Made them? You created new materials? We had to. Our survival depended on it. Sarah pulled up a hologram showing Earth's solar system. Counselor, when was the last time your species faced extinction? Thexavar was quiet for a moment. The Kryn have been stable for over 3,000 years. Earth almost died 3 times in the last 200 years, Sarah said. The hologram changed, showing images of devastation. Nuclear explosions, cities choked with pollution, wars that killed millions. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons, then with environmental collapse, then with resource wars. Each time we pulled back from the edge at the last moment. The Kryn scientists stared at the images in silence. When we finally detected signals from the Coalition 50 years ago, we realized we weren't alone in the universe, Sarah continued. We also realized how far behind we were. You had the stars. We were still killing each other over scraps of land on one planet. So you developed antimatter drives to catch up? Velthar asked. We developed antimatter drives because we had no choice. Sarah closed the hologram. Our fossil fuels were running out. Fusion was too slow. If we wanted to reach you before we destroyed ourselves, we needed something powerful, something that could push us to the stars fast enough to matter. Marcus spoke up from his position by the door. We lost a lot of good people figuring it out. 73 scientists died in the first reactor accident, another 100 in the second. But we kept trying because the alternative was staying on Earth and dying slowly. That's insane, one of the other Kryn scientists whispered. That's desperation, Sarah corrected. When your species faces extinction, you try things that seem impossible. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you succeed. We succeeded. Thexvar studied Sarah's face. What else have you developed? What do you mean? If you can engineer stable antimatter containment, what other impossible things have you created? Thexvar's voice was sharp. We need to know what we're dealing with. Sarah met his gaze. We're not your enemy, counselor. That's not what I asked. Before Sarah could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the station. A calm voice spoke through the intercom in multiple languages. All vessels, this is station control. We have multiple FTL signatures emerging at the perimeter. Stand by for identification. Thexvar stood quickly. That's close to the station. No one should be arriving unannounced. They rushed to the observation deck. Through the massive windows, Sarah could see ships materializing from faster-than-light travel. Large ships. Warships. Their hulls were dark red and covered in weapon ports. Vraxian, Velthar said, his voice filled with dread. Those are Vraxian battlecruisers. How many? Thexavar demanded. I count 40 vessels, counselor. It's a full war fleet. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She had read about the Vraxians in the Coalition database. They were the galaxy's apex predators, the strongest military force known. No one challenged the Vraxians and won. A communication channel opened. A face appeared on the observation deck's main screen. The Vraxian commander looked almost human, except for the bone ridges along its skull and the completely black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. This is Admiral Kratos of the Vraxian Third Fleet. We have detected the presence of a human vessel at this station. The humans are in possession of dangerous technology that poses a threat to galactic stability. Sarah stepped forward. I'm Commander Sarah Chen of Earth. We pose no threat to anyone. That is for us to determine. Admiral Kratos' expression didn't change. You will surrender your vessel immediately for inspection and study. Your crew will submit to interrogation. This is not negotiable. We're on a diplomatic mission, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. We came here in peace, and you will leave in pieces if you refuse our demands. The Admiral leaned closer to the camera. We have 40 warships. You have 1 small vessel. You will comply or we will take what we want by force. You have 1 hour to decide. The screen went dark. Thexvar turned to Sarah. His scales had gone pale. You have to surrender. The Vraxians never make empty threats. If you resist, they'll destroy the Defiant and possibly damage the station in the process. Sarah looked out at the Vraxian fleet. 40 warships. Each one probably carried enough firepower to level a city. Against that, she had the Defiant and a crew of 23. No, Sarah said quietly. What? I said no. We're not surrendering. Sarah looked at Thexvar. We came here in peace. We'll leave the same way. But we're not handing over our ship to be torn apart by curious aliens. You'll die, Velthar said. They'll blast you into atoms, Marcus laughed. It was a harsh sound that made the Kryn flinch. They're welcome to try. Sarah activated her communication device. All Defiant crew return to the ship immediately. Prepare for emergency departure. This is suicide, Thexvar said. Maybe. Sarah headed toward the door. But we didn't survive 2 centuries of hell on Earth just to bend the knee to the first bully we meet out here. If the Vraxians want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget. The Valinor trading nexus erupted into chaos. Ships from dozens of species began emergency departures, fleeing from the confrontation about to unfold. No one wanted to be nearby when the Vraxians opened fire. Station control sent out frantic messages urging the humans to surrender, warning them that resistance was impossible. Sarah ignored all of it. She walked calmly through the station corridors toward the docking bay, with Marcus and Dr. Park following close behind. Aliens pressed themselves against the walls to let them pass, staring at the humans like they were already dead. Sarah, Dr. Park said quietly, are we really doing this? Yes, 40 warships, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. I can count, Elizabeth. Just making sure you're aware of the odds. Sarah stopped and turned to face her crew. I'm very aware. But if we surrender now, humanity becomes a footnote. The species that built something amazing and then handed it over the first time someone threatened them. That's not who we are. That's not who we've ever been. Marcus nodded. She's right. We fought too hard to get here. Bled too much. Lost too many friends. We don't surrender. Not to the Vraxians. Not to anyone. They reached the Defiant and sealed the airlock behind them. The ship hummed with power as the antimatter reactor came to full operation. Sarah took her place in the command chair while the crew ran through pre-flight checks. All systems green, reported Lieutenant Morrison. Reactor at 100%. Shields at maximum. Weapons armed and ready. Docking clamps released, added Ensign Kim from the helm. We're free to maneuver. Sarah looked at the main screen showing the Vraxian fleet arranged in a standard blockade formation. The alien ships were massive, each one 10 times the size of the Defiant. Their hulls glowed with charging weapons. Take us out nice and slow, Sarah ordered. Give them time to reconsider. The Defiant moved away from the station, heading directly toward the Vraxian fleet. On the station, thousands of aliens watched from observation decks and view screens. Some recorded the moment. They wanted to witness the end of humanity's brief appearance on the galactic stage. A communication channel opened. Admiral Kratos appeared on the screen again. You are making a mistake, human. Turn back now or we will open fire. We're leaving, Sarah said calmly. You're in our way. You face 40 warships, the finest vessels the Vraxian Empire has ever built. What do you have? One small ship that looks ready for the scrapyard. I have one human ship, Sarah replied. That's all I need. Kratos' black eyes narrowed. Your courage is admirable. Your stupidity will be your death. You have 30 seconds to change course. Sarah cut the communication. She looked around at her crew. Young faces, most of them. They had joined the space program hoping to explore the stars, not fight wars. But they weren't afraid. They were ready. All power to forward shields, Sarah ordered. Weapons hot. Marcus, I need everything the reactor can give us. You'll have it, Marcus said from the engineering station. Antimatter flow at maximum safe levels. We can push beyond safe if needed. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Defiant continued forward. The distance to the Vraxian fleet closed. 5 kilometers. 4. 3. The Vraxian ships opened fire. Plasma bolts erupted from dozens of weapons, filling space with deadly energy. The standard weapon of galactic warfare. Plasma cannons could melt through ship hulls in seconds. The concentrated fire from 40 ships would normally vaporize anything in its path. The plasma bolt struck the Defiant's shields and dissipated harmlessly. The ship didn't even shudder. On the station, aliens watching the battle fell silent. On the Vraxian ships, tactical officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Shields holding at 98%, Morrison reported. No damage. Admiral Kratos appeared on the screen again. His expression had changed from confident to uncertain. What kind of shields are those? The kind that work, Sarah said. Last chance, Admiral. Move your ships out of our way. All vessels, maximum firepower, Kratos shouted. Burn through those shields. The Vraxian fleet unleashed everything. Plasma cannons fired continuously. Energy beams lanced through space. Missile pods opened and released swarms of warheads. The barrage was intense enough to destroy a small moon. The Defiant's shields absorbed it all. The ship glided forward through the storm of fire, untouched. Shields at 93%, Morrison said. Still well within safe limits. Sarah stood from her chair. Target the lead Vraxian battleship. Load railgun number 1. Single round. Sarah, are you sure? Dr. Park asked. Once we fire, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment they surrounded us. Sarah looked at the tactical display. We tried peace. They chose violence. Now they get to see what humanity learned during the isolation wars. Marcus worked at his console. Railgun 1 loaded. Tungsten penetrator round, mass 200 kilograms. Antimatter drive charged and ready to accelerate projectile to 0.9 light speed. 0.9? Velthar's voice came over the open communication channel from the station. That's relativistic velocity. The impact would be devastating, Sarah finished. That's the idea. Ensign Kim, target their engines. I want to disable, not destroy. Targeted, Commander. Fire. The railgun made no sound in the vacuum of space. The tungsten rod launched from the Defiant's forward cannon, accelerated by a focused burst from the antimatter drive. In less than a second, the projectile reached 90% of light speed. To the Vraxians, it appeared as a brief flash. Then their battleship's entire rear section exploded. The tungsten rod punched through shields like they weren't there, through armor like it was paper, through the engine room and out the other side. The kinetic energy alone was enormous. When the shockwave caught up to the initial impact, it tore the ship's engines completely apart. The Vraxian battleship went dark and began tumbling through space. Powerless. Complete silence fell over every communication channel. On the station, aliens stared in shock. The Vraxians, the unstoppable military force, had just watched one of their finest battleships crippled by a single shot from the primitive human vessel. Admiral Kratos's face reappeared. His confidence was gone. What? What was that? A warning, Sarah said. The next shot won't aim for engines. Admiral, you have a choice. You can keep fighting and watch your fleet get destroyed piece by piece, or you can stand down and let us leave in peace. You can't fight all of us. Watch me. Sarah gestured at the tactical display. We have 6 railguns. At this range, we can fire 1 every 3 seconds. How many ships are you willing to lose today, Admiral? Kratos looked at something off-screen. Probably his tactical officer giving him damage reports. His shoulders slumped. For the first time in Vraxian military history, an admiral considered retreating from a weaker opponent. All ships, stand down, Kratos said quietly. Let them pass. The Vraxian fleet began moving aside, clearing a path. Sarah nodded to Ensign Kim. Take us through. Standard cruising speed. The Defiant glided between the Vraxian warships like a shark swimming through a school of fish. The alien vessels kept their weapons powered down, afraid to provoke another demonstration. As they cleared the Vraxian formation, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. More ships dropping out of FTL all around them. Dozens of vessels, then hundreds. Multiple ships emerging from faster than light, Morrison said, his voice tense. IF signals identify them as Coalition Emergency Response Fleet. Count is up to 140 vessels. They're taking aggressive positions around us, Commander. Sarah felt her blood run cold. They had just escaped the Vraxians, only to face an even larger force. She looked at the identification codes on the screen. Ships from the Kryn Empire, the Trell Collective, the Harmony Sphere, and a dozen other major coalition powers. An old Kryn voice came over the communication channel. Human vessel Defiant. This is Fleet Coordinator Zexvan of the Coalition Emergency Council. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to a secured location. Do not resist. This is for everyone's safety. Sarah looked at her crew. They were tired. The shields had held, but another battle would drain the reactor. And unlike the Vraxians, these were supposed to be friends. Commander? Marcus asked. What do we do? Sarah thought about Earth, about the billions of humans back home hoping for a better future among the stars. She thought about the long road they had traveled to get here. And she made her decision. Open a channel, all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. The Coalition Emergency Council met in a secure chamber aboard the Valinor Trading Nexus. Representatives from 30 major species gathered in person or through hologram projection. The mood was tense. Outside, the Coalition Emergency Fleet maintained a careful blockade around the human ship, keeping weapons charged but not aimed. No one wanted to start another fight, but no one was willing to let the Defiant leave either. Thexvar stood at the center of the chamber and addressed the council. The humans have demonstrated technology that threatens the balance of galactic power. Antimatter weapons capable of destroying our most advanced warships with single shots. Shields that can absorb unlimited conventional firepower. We must take action before this threat grows. Threat? Sarah's voice came through the communication channel. The council had agreed to let her speak remotely from the Defiant. We defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack. That makes us a threat? You crippled a Vraxian battleship, said Representative Qualix of the Harmony Sphere. Her body shimmered like living water as she spoke. The Vraxians have maintained peace in this sector for 200 years through strength. You have upset that balance. The Vraxians tried to steal our ship, Sarah replied. Would you have surrendered? No one wanted to admit that they probably would have. The Vraxians had been the dominant military power for so long that most species simply accepted their demands rather than fight. Admiral Kratos stood near the back of the chamber. His presence had been requested by the council, much to his embarrassment. The human speaks truth. We moved against them without proper authorization from this council. Our intelligence services acted on their own authority. The blame for this incident rests with us. Thexavar's scales rippled with frustration. That may be true, Admiral, but it does not change the facts. The humans possess weapons that can destroy any ship in this chamber. They have shields that make them nearly invincible to conventional attack, and they have kept these capabilities secret until now. How can we trust them? You can't, Sarah said bluntly. Trust is earned through time and shared experience. We don't have that yet. But we came here seeking friendship, not conflict. We want to join you, not conquer you. Then prove it, demanded Counselor Trill, the floating jellyfish being. Submit to inspection. Allow our scientists to study your technology. Show us you have nothing to hide. We have plenty to hide, Sarah said. Every species does. But I'll tell you what you really want to know. The Defiant isn't our only antimatter vessel. We have an entire fleet back home. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Representatives argued with each other in a dozen languages. Thexavar raised his forearms for silence. How many ships? 12 battlecruisers, 37 destroyers, 8 carriers, all equipped with antimatter drives and railgun weapon systems, plus our defensive platforms. Defensive platforms? Felthar asked from his seat beside Thexavar. Automated weapon stations. We have 4,000 of them scattered through our solar system. From the inner planets to the Oort cloud. They protect Earth from external threats. Sarah paused. One of those platforms destroyed a Kryn research vessel 3 days ago. The ship was scanning our outer system defenses without permission. Our automated systems identified it as a hostile reconnaissance mission and responded accordingly. Thexvar's scales went pale. The Seeker. We lost contact with the Seeker 3 days ago. All 73 crew members. You killed them? Our defensive system killed them, Sarah corrected. The platforms don't ask questions. They're programmed to destroy anything conducting military scans of our territory. We warned the Coalition about them in our initial contact messages. Your government chose to send a spy ship anyway. That mission was not authorized by me or my council, Thexvar said, his voice shaking with anger. Rogue elements in our military acted without approval. But that doesn't excuse murder. And attempting to steal our technology doesn't excuse sending warships to threaten us, Sarah shot back. We can trade accusations all day, Counselor. Or we can acknowledge that both our peoples made mistakes and try to move forward. Admiral Kratos stepped forward. The human has a point. We all rushed to judgment. The Vraxians tried to seize their ship by force. The Kryn sent spies. And now we surround them like criminals when they came here seeking friendship. Perhaps the real threat is not the humans, but our own fear and pride. Easy for you to say, Admiral, Qualix replied. Your fleet retreated from one small human ship. Your reputation is already damaged. But what about the rest of us? How do we sleep knowing that humanity has weapons we cannot defend against? How do we sleep? Sarah asked. The bitterness in her voice was clear. How do you think we sleep knowing we're surrounded by species with thousands of years of shared knowledge and technology? You had the luxury of developing in peace. You had mentors and allies. You had time. Sarah's image appeared on the main screen of the chamber. She looked tired. We had none of that. When we first detected your radio signals 50 years ago, we realized how alone we were, how far behind, and we knew that if we wanted to survive, we had to catch up fast. The screen changed, showing images from Earth, cities in ruins, nuclear wastelands, oceans choked with pollution, Mass graves from the resource wars. We almost destroyed ourselves 3 times, Sarah continued. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, resource conflicts that killed millions. Each time we pulled back from the edge at the last possible moment. Do you know why? Because we learned something. We learned that when you have nowhere else to go, you either work together or you die together. More images appeared. Scientists working in dangerous conditions. Test reactors exploding. Memorial walls covered in names of the dead. 73 scientists died building our first antimatter reactor. Another 100 in the second failure. 200 more in various accidents as we developed the containment systems. We didn't crack antimatter fusion because we're smarter than you. We did it because we were desperate. Because our world was dying and the stars were our only hope. Dr. Park's voice joined the transmission. Every technology we have was born from crisis. Our antimatter drives exist because fusion was too slow. Our railguns exist because we couldn't afford complex weapons systems. Our shields exist because we knew we'd face hostile forces out here. We're not advanced. We're survivors. The chamber was silent. Aliens who had been arguing moments before now stared at the images of human suffering. Texvar spoke quietly. You said you have 4,000 defensive platforms. Why so many? Because we prepared for the worst, Marcus answered, his voice coming through the channel. We assumed that when we reached the stars we'd find species who would see us as primitives, as resources to exploit or threats to eliminate. We were right, weren't we? The first thing the Vraxians did was try to take our ship. But we're not all like the Vraxians, Trill protested. Many of us would welcome humanity and peace, would you? Sarah asked. Then why are we surrounded by your warships right now? Why are you debating whether to quarantine our entire solar system? You talk about peace, but you're preparing for war. Texavar looked down at his hands. All 4 of them. You're right. We mocked you when you arrived. We treated you like ignorant children. And when you proved to be more advanced than we expected, we responded with fear instead of curiosity. He looked up at the screen. I apologize, Commander Chen. Not just for myself, but for the entire Kryn Empire. We were wrong. Other council members shifted uncomfortably. Apologizing to a new species, especially one they had been planning to contain, went against everything they were used to. Apology noted, Sarah said. But words are easy. What happens now? You asked us to prove we're not a threat. How do we do that when you've already decided we're dangerous? Fleet Coordinator Zexavan, who had been silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. He was old, even by Kryn standards, with scales faded to almost white. Perhaps the question is wrong. Perhaps we should not ask whether humans are a threat. Perhaps we should ask whether we want them as friends or enemies. Because if we treat them as enemies now, that is what they will become. Wise words, Admiral Kratos said. I have fought many battles, conquered many foes, but today a single human ship defeated my fleet without destroying a single vessel. They could have killed thousands. They chose mercy instead. That speaks to their character more than their weapons. The council debated for hours. Arguments rose and fell like waves. Some demanded strict controls on human technology. Others called for immediate friendship and alliance. Still others suggested various compromise positions. Finally, a vote was called. The motion: accept humanity as provisional members of the coalition, with full membership to be reviewed after a period of cultural exchange and mutual understanding. The vote passed. Barely. 23 in favor, 17 against, 7 abstaining. Sarah appeared on screen again. What are the terms? You will share your antimatter technology with the coalition over time, through controlled technology transfers, Zexvan explained. In exchange, we will share our cultural knowledge, our history, and our less sensitive technologies. A joint research station will be built to study dangerous technologies safely, and you will remove the automated platforms from your outer system. The platforms stay, Sarah said firmly. They're our security, non-negotiable. Zexavan nodded slowly. Then they stay. But you must program them to recognize coalition vessels and not fire automatically. Agreed. But any ship conducting military scans of our territory will still be considered hostile. Fair enough. Zexvan looked around the chamber. Does anyone object to these terms? Silence. Even those who had voted against acceptance seemed too tired to argue further. Then it is done, Zexvan said. Welcome to the coalition, humanity. May our friendship last longer than our fears. Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. We'll do our best, Coordinator. That's all anyone can promise. 10 years later, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Unity Forge Station and watched ships from a dozen different species arrive and depart. The station floated in neutral space between Earth's system and the Coalition core worlds. It had been built jointly, with human engineering combined with alien materials and design philosophy. The result was beautiful, a mixture of human practicality and alien artistry. Still can't believe we built this, Marcus said, joining her at the window. He was grayer now, with lines around his eyes, but his crooked smile remained the same. We didn't build it alone, Sarah replied. That's the whole point. Unity Forge had become the center of joint human-alien research. Scientists from 30 species worked side by side, studying everything from antimatter containment to biological engineering to cultural psychology. The dangerous technologies that each species had developed in isolation were now being understood, improved, and safely shared. Not everyone had been happy about humanity's inclusion in the coalition. Some species still viewed humans as dangerous wildcards. The Vraxians in particular had struggled with their wounded pride after the incident at Valinor. But slowly, through shared work and cultural exchange, the barriers had begun to fall. The delegation from Earth is arriving, Dr. Park announced from her console. She was the station's science director now, overseeing teams of researchers from across the galaxy. President Martinez and her staff. They want to see the new hybrid drive prototype. Sarah nodded. Let's show them what we've accomplished. The hangar bay held the prototype vessel, designated Hope's Dawn. It was smaller than most Coalition cruisers, but its design was unmistakably different from anything built before. The hull combined human angular efficiency with flowing Trell aesthetics. The drive system used human antimatter technology improved by Kryn gravitational theory. The shields were a collaboration between human engineers and Harmony Sphere energy specialists. President Martinez, Earth's first leader born after first contact, walked slowly around the ship. She was young, barely 40, but she carried herself with confidence. It's beautiful. How fast? Faster than anything currently in service, Marcus replied proudly. The combination of antimatter drive and gravitational field manipulation lets us reach 0.95 light speed safely. And the hybrid shield system can absorb weapons fire that would destroy a Vraxian battleship. More importantly, Dr. Park added, 17 different species contributed to this design. It's not a human ship or an alien ship. It's our ship, Martinez smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. The Coalition Council is considering a joint defense force. If we can demonstrate that combined technology works, it might help convince the holdouts. Some species will never trust us, Sarah said. We should accept that. But more will, Martinez replied. Every year we get closer. Every collaboration proves we can work together. A communication alert interrupted them. The station's security chief, a Vraxian named Ketchar, appeared on the screens. Commander Chen, we have an unauthorized vessel approaching from the outer marker. They're not responding to hails. Sarah's expression hardened. Old instincts from her military days kicked in immediately. Species? Unknown. The design doesn't match any Coalition records. They're small, moving fast. Weapons detected but not charged. All security teams to alert status. Activate defense systems but hold fire. Sarah turned to Marcus. Get the prototype out of the hangar. I don't want it exposed if this goes wrong. On it. Sarah rushed to the command center with President Martinez following. The main screen showed the approaching vessel. It was indeed strange, with a design that seemed almost organic. Curves and flowing lines that didn't match any known engineering philosophy. Still no response to our hails, reported the communications officer. Try every known language, Sarah ordered, including Earth languages just in case. They waited. The strange ship continued its approach, now just 10 kilometers from the station. Close enough to be dangerous, far enough to escape if they wanted to. Then suddenly the ship stopped. A new communication channel opened. The voice that came through was high-pitched and nervous. Please don't shoot. We mean no harm. We are seeking help. The screen showed the speaker. Sarah felt her heart skip. The alien was small, barely a meter tall, with large eyes and smooth gray skin. They looked fragile and frightened. This is Commander Sarah Chen of Unity Forge Station. Who are you? My name is Pip. I am a Velan. My people's world is dying. We detected your station's broadcasts and followed the signal. We hoped... The small alien's voice broke. We hoped you might help us. Sarah exchanged glances with Martinez. This was the Coalition's purpose, to help species in need. But it was also a test. How would humanity and the Coalition work together in a real crisis? "You're welcome here, Pip," Sarah said gently. "Bring your ship into Hangar Bay 3. We'll provide food, medical care, and shelter while we discuss your situation." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Relief flooded Pip's voice. Over the next few hours, the story emerged. The Velans were a small species, only recently achieving spaceflight. Their home world had been stable for thousands of years, but sudden volcanic activity was making it uninhabitable. They needed help evacuating their population, about 20 million individuals, to a new world. They had nowhere else to turn. "The Coalition has protocols for this," Thexvar said during the emergency council meeting held via hologram. He had become one of humanity's strongest advocates over the years, working to bridge gaps between species. "We can relocate the Velans to an empty world in the Harmony Sphere region. The relocation will take months," Qualis added. "We'll need transport ships, supplies, medical support. It will require cooperation from multiple species." "Then we cooperate," Martinez said firmly. "This is exactly the kind of situation the Coalition should handle together." Admiral Kratos, who now commanded the Coalition Joint Defense Initiative, nodded in agreement. "My ships can provide security during the evacuation. The Velans are vulnerable during such a large-scale movement. Human transport vessels can assist," Sarah offered. "Our antimatter drives make us fast. We can move people quickly." The plan came together with surprising speed. Ships from a dozen species converged on the Velan homeworld. Human transports with their efficient designs worked alongside Kryn carriers with their massive cargo holds. Trail medical ships provided care for the sick and elderly. Harmony Sphere engineers set up temporary housing on the new world. Sarah commanded the Defiant again for the operation. The old ship had been upgraded with new hybrid systems, but retained its original character. She watched from the bridge as thousands of small Velan faces peered nervously from the transport pods. They looked so afraid, so overwhelmed by the massive alien ships that had come to save them. "Reminds me of us," Marcus said quietly. "When we first went into space? Scared but hopeful. The difference is they asked for help," Sarah replied. "We were too proud, or too afraid of being rejected." The evacuation took 3 months. Every day brought new challenges. Coordination between multiple species with different technologies and communication styles was difficult. There were misunderstandings, accidents, and moments of frustration. But there were also moments of unexpected beauty. A Vraxian soldier teaching Velan children to sing warrior songs. A human medic working alongside a Kryn doctor to develop treatments for Velan physiology. A trail artist creating holographic displays to calm frightened evacuees. When the last Velan transport landed on their new world, a celebration was held on Unity Forge. Representatives from every species that had helped gathered in the station's main hall. The room was filled with the sounds of different languages, the smells of exotic foods, and the sight of aliens from across the galaxy sharing stories and laughter. Pip found Sarah near the observation window. The small Velan looked up at her with those large, expressive eyes. "Why did you help us?" "We have nothing to offer in return." Sarah knelt down to Pip's level. "Because that's what friends do. You help each other when times are hard. No payment needed. But we're not part of your coalition. We're nobody important. You're alive. You're people. That makes you important," Sarah smiled. "Besides, we know what it's like to feel alone and afraid. We don't want anyone else to feel that way if we can help it." Pip's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. On behalf of all Velans, thank you." Later that evening, Sarah stood at the observation window again, watching Earth rise in the distance. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, with the lights of cities visible on the night side. Ships moved in orbit, some human, some alien, all working together in the crowded space lanes. Thexvar joined her, his scales now showing streaks of white with age. "Do you remember when we first met, Commander? When I mocked your ship? I remember. I was a fool. I saw you as primitives because you were different. I never asked why you were different or what you had survived to become who you are. We've all learned since then," Sarah said. "That's what matters. Have you ever regretted it? Coming to the stars? You could have stayed hidden on Earth, safe from all the complications of galactic politics." Sarah considered the question. "No, we were dying alone on Earth. Out here, we're living among friends. That's worth any complication. Thexvar nodded slowly. I'm glad you came. The galaxy is better with humanity in it. You remind us of things we forgot. Courage, determination, the willingness to take risks for what you believe in. We learned all that from desperation, Sarah pointed out. Perhaps. But you chose to use those lessons for good rather than conquest. That's the real measure of a species' character. They stood together in comfortable silence watching the stars. Ships of a dozen different designs moved through the space around Unity Forge. Each one carried crew members from multiple species, working together toward common goals. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions and disagreements. But it was better than the alternative. President Martinez approached with Dr. Park and Marcus. The Council has approved the next phase of expansion. 3 more Unity Forge stations will be built. They want one near Earth, one near the Kryn homeworld, and one in deep space near the Velan settlement. They're trusting us with a station near Earth? Marcus asked, surprised. They trust us to build it right, Martinez replied. Human engineering with coalition oversight. Just like everything else we've accomplished together. Sarah smiled. It's a good future we're building. Not the one any of us expected, but a good one. The best things never are expected, Dr. Park said. 10 years ago, we were the weird outsiders with one ship and too many weapons. Now look at us. Partners, friends, family. We still have the weapons, though, Marcus pointed out with a grin. Yes, but now we use them to protect everyone, not just ourselves, Sarah replied. That's the difference between surviving and living. They stood together at the window, watching the galaxy slowly turn. Behind them, the celebration continued, aliens and humans mixing freely, sharing food and stories and hopes for the future. It was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first detected those alien signals 50 years ago. They had come to the stars looking for friendship. They had found it, though not in the way they expected. Not through being impressive or powerful, but through being genuine. Through showing that survival made you strong, but choosing to help others made you human. Sarah thought about all the people who had died to get humanity here. The scientists in the reactor accidents, the soldiers in the isolation wars, the millions who perished in the conflicts that nearly destroyed Earth. They had paid the price so that future generations could stand here, among the stars, among friends. They would be proud, Sarah whispered, touching the window gently. Who? Martinez asked. Everyone who got us here. Everyone who believed we could be better than our worst instincts. Sarah turned to face her companions. We came to the stars broken and desperate, but we kept the best parts of ourselves. The hope, the determination, the refusal to give up. And now we share those things with everyone. Thexvar raised a glass in toast. To humanity. The species that turned desperation into determination, and determination into friendship. To the coalition, Martinez added, the family we found among the stars. They drank together, human and alien, as Unity Forge orbited peacefully in the darkness. Outside, the ships continued their work. Inside, different species learned from each other and built something new together. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, but humanity had learned long ago that the biggest challenges made the strongest people. And now, standing together with their coalition friends, they were ready for whatever came next. The mocking had stopped long ago. In its place was respect, earned through courage and maintained through friendship. And that, Sarah thought as she watched the stars, was the best possible outcome of their journey to the cosmos. They had come seeking acceptance. They had found belonging, and in the process they had helped the galaxy remember that strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together.